Should be a check valve in here, I think. Let's see if this is dirty. Yeah, I think it's gunked up. So if I clean this out, maybe this thing will start drawing some fuel up. See if I can clean it up real quick. Oh, man, this fuel smells bad too. Here's some brake cleaner. I think I'll just use this little valve cover to spray it in. Can everybody hear me all right? I did get a brand new mic that I'm testing out. Drop a comment or hit the like button or something. Let me know if you guys can hear me. Yeah, the fuel system on this draws fuel up through this little one-way check valve. And it draws it in down here at the bottom, and then there's an air mixer valve right here. And then it draws it into the engine. There. Now you can probably hear it. All right, let me screw it back in. Maybe it'll start. Can everybody hear me all right? I hope so. Sorry, I'm using my left hand to stay out of the camera. Oh. Okay. Let's give her a couple spins and see what she does. Okay. Might have to go get some carburetor cleaner. Oh. A little bit of smoke. Pretty noisy. I'm gonna go open up the garage door. Man, that thing is I gotta try to get it outside. So this thing hasn't been fired up in over a year. Oh, that's a lot better. Man, it is deafening loud. Okay, I gotta oil this thing up real quick. Have to manually oil it. Does it have water in it? Yeah, you gotta have water in these things, in that hopper, to cool it. It's been a while. I wanted to make sure that there was some water in there. I'm just gonna use a little bit of this. See if this thing will turn on. So, I actually just kicked on the charging system. So now the alternator is actually loaded up and charging. I'm going to grab a multimeter so you guys can see it actually charging. I don't know if you can see that or not. There we go. Yep, so it's charging. I might plug something into that inverter and see if it'll power it up. Any guesses on what year this engine is? Or maybe what year that alternator's from? Make and model of the alternator? Any guesses? Oh, I need to get some earplugs real quick. This is loud. There we go. How do I interact on here? What does that do? Huh. All right, well, I'm going to plug in the Pac-Man, and we'll see if it'll power up. All right, there we are. Got some Pac-Man up. I don't know if you guys can see the flames coming out of that exhaust. Pretty cool. Anyway, we got the inverter powered up with this alternator, and we'll play a little bit of Pac-Man. This is off-grid living here. Oh man, I'm really surprised how well this thing is running after over a year of sitting. Only took about 5 minutes to get it running. Alright, I beat the first level. No way to pause this game. Dang it. You guys picking up the audio all right? Is this engine like super loud, or? I haven't used this microphone before, so. Looks like it's using 50 watts right now. Oh, dang it, this thing is being a little unresponsive. Dang it, I lost. How do I turn on the light? Oh, there we go. Let's see what else I can power with this thing. I'm actually kind of surprised this cheap game console even takes 50 watts, to be honest. Let's see where it's at. 44 watts. Putting out 110 volts. Check the RPMs. Almost 500 RPMs. Any guesses on what year this engine is, or even what type of engine it is? Has anybody seen anything like this before? Doesn't have electric start. Doesn't have pull start. You gotta hand crank it over. We got our Pac-Man over there powered up. Just in case you don't believe me, there's the power cord. plugged into the inverter. International Harvester makes this engine, I'll give you a hint. And the alternator is from a General Motors from the 80s. Alright, let me see if I can find something else to plug in. This might be a good time to test this light. It probably doesn't work. Let's see. Nope. Well, that's good. Now I can either replace the bulb or trash it. That thing's just chugging away. Pretty happy with how good it's running after sitting for so long. A little bit of fresh gas. Clean that little check valve, and she was off to the races. I wish I knew how well the audio sounded on this. Oh, here we go. I found something to plug in. There we go. We got some underglow lighting here. Oh, that looks terrible. Alright, let's see how many watts it's using now. 65. So that lamp there only uses about 20 watts. That's pretty good. Heck, that's really good. According to this box that it just came in, it says it uses 50 watts, but let me unplug this and see where we're at. Man, this light's using like 5 watts. Man, that's a very energy efficient light. that back in. Well, I'm just going to let it run for a little while. Charge up that battery. That battery hasn't been charged up in over a year, so definitely putting that alternator to good work. This engine only puts out 2.5 horsepower according to the power rating, but probably puts out a lot more torque than modern small engines do. Originally, this engine had a big wide pulley on it where that skinny pulley is, and I had a heck of a time getting that pulley off. It took quite a bit of time. But I got that pulley off of Zorro for I think about 30 bucks. It was pretty cheap. That allows me to use the D-belt to go to the alternator. This little generator part, I built a frame for it that actually has little pins. I don't know if you can see that pin down there. But I can just pull those pins on each side, and I can slide the whole generator part away from the engine part for moving it around a little easier. Man, I can't believe it. Nobody has guessed what year this engine is. Anybody want to guess what decade it's from? Early 1900s, 1960s, 1930s? Any guesses at all? Heck, I bet you could snap a picture and send it to ChatGTP. It probably would know, maybe. So that thing's steaming from the top, and that's actually how it pulls the heat away from the engine. The steam actually helps keep it cool. It's a very simple method, the way this engine works, but it was effective. These engines, they ran our country for decades, starting in the early 1900s, and they still use these engines all the way through the 1950s, even into the 60s. Sometimes you'll even see some of these running old oil pumps still in service today. I saw one as recent as last year, still in service, popping away. Well, I'm going to see if I can play another round of Pac-Man. See if I can get past level 2. Probably check the oil on this thing. You can actually smell it burning just a tiny bit of oil. Probably not too bad. Alright, well, packing isn't working out. But, for anyone listening, there is a pretty cool story on this engine. I live in Kansas, and this engine actually came from Montana. And it came from one of my coworkers. He had a great uncle that passed away, and he wanted this engine, so he brought it back to Kansas, and then he had it for about 10 or 15 years and decided to sell it to another individual that lived here in Kansas. And then I happened to get the engine from that individual, and I had just built this contraption. And I was showing another coworker this contraption I had built, and the original owner, or the great nephew or whatever, he just overheard the engine running from my video, running just like this, and he was like, "Oh, you got an old stationary engine there?" And he looked over at it and he said, "Man, I used to have one just like that." And we got to talking. Turns out this was his engine from Montana that was from his great uncle. So it's kind of a small world. Yeah, I would have never known had I not built this and just happened to be playing it for a coworker. So it's got kind of a cool backstory. This engine used to run a conveyor that would run hay bales up into the loft of a big barn. And that's what it did up in Montana for 40 years. They used it for. So kind of cool. See if I can find a hammer to give this thing a little whack. Doesn't seem to want to idle down or up. I don't think she's going to idle up any higher. I do have another one of these engines sitting over here. And this one's actually what they call the big block version. Kind of hard to tell, but it's about, I don't know, 30% bigger. So one of these days I'll get that one running. really steaming. I'm actually wearing earplugs. This thing's so loud. Oh, we got a visitor. What are you doing, dog? What are you doing? I think the most I've powered with this thing was about 1,000 watts. And you could visibly, or I guess audibly, you could hear the engine start bogging down. Working to try to keep up with that load, but so you know, you figure you can go to Harbor Freight and get a 1,000 watt generator that's pretty small, but this thing's pretty cool. It's definitely an antique and probably one of a kind. I bet there's not another one that's exactly like this. So. Kind of like old stuff. Got a mix of new in it. That inverter's definitely not old school, but the odd alternators from the 80s. Nobody wanted to guess the year of this thing, so I'll just say it. It's a 1943. They made this model from the 1930s until I think 48 was the last year. And then they made another model that looks almost identical to this. It's very similar. And I think they started making that in the late 20s all the way through the 30s. Let's see what that dog's doing out there. It's still just pulling 64 watts with both of these things plugged in. Pac-Man draws most of it. It's pulling about 50 watts, between 50 and 55. Which is a little more than I would have thought, but I really do like the way this thing sounds. I could listen to this all day long. Any guesses on what that green button does? Boom. Boom. Boone. Come here. Come on. What you doing? All right. I think it's time to call it a night.